In this day and age, young people are facing ever-increasing issues with identity within social groups. This leads to people coming up with interesting ways to overcome these issues. Young people often have a lot of different personalities. The way they speak and act can change dramatically depending who they're with. One of these young people has come up with a somewhat unusual way to deal with this pressure. He has created the sobriquet for himself. You may know him as Matthew, but he'd rather you knew him as MJ.
So the most obvious things about MJ are, number one, he's a pretty smart guy, but that's kind of buried underneath this flaming, godforsaken ego, which he just sort of exudes everywhere in the way he walks and the way he talks.
He's a good guy, likes to talk himself up a bit, I reckon, but
He's, I guess you'd say, up himself. But my opinion of MJ...
yeah, overall it's pretty helpful, nice guy, I reckon, yeah.
Sure.
I like him. I think he's deep, in a very shallow way.
Why has Matt created MJ? Because he thinks incredibly highly of himself.
I'm still not really sure. I'm not sure how you come to the conclusion that you have to be frickin' MJ.
I think it just gives him another side to who he really is, I reckon.
Yep. He thinks easily that he's the best person around the school.
Because he tried a couple of things before this, a couple of other nicknames. It was obviously something he was doing on purpose, but I still don't know the purpose.
And he likes to tell everybody about.
I guess it was just to give himself a broad, identifiable persona that he could talk to people with, because he meshes in with so many groups that, you know, it's hard to just sort of assume that that's one person, treat the same person that way. But
So he can just kind of like express himself more as that person kind of thing.
sort of like being a celebrity, he has turned himself into something of a celebrity.
Well, he seems to be creating this revisionist idea that it's been around since like year 8.
MJ himself sort of showed up somewhere around, year 8 or 9.
Maybe about year 10, I think.
It really wasn't a thing until start of year 10, even a bit further into that.
I don't know, I reckon it'd probably have to be...
Just started saying it.
I only really started noticing it in math when he started yelling it at the teacher.
Call himself Matthew James. He used to sign his name Matthew James after a while. He said, I'm going to make this a thing.
And just before I knew what was happening, everyone was calling him MJ.
And he shortened it to MJ. And he just started saying it over and over again. It was so annoying, so bloody, self-centered, self-aggrandizing.
I was fine with it. Pissed Baden off to no extent, but
Because I remember him saying he didn't want to go into college just as Matt.
and then he took on the personality. That was a more gradual thing.
He wanted to kind of make a name for himself, and I think that's when the whole MJ name started.
And then other people just started saying it for some reason, and I have no idea why to this day.
Matthew is bloody determined.
I don't know, because it's probably because we all kind of keep it as a joke.
Yeah. It's a very marketable idea.
It's also catchy, I suppose.
It's very easy to say. It's short, it's snappy, it gets to the point, and it gets to who he is. It's a self-centered, short, snappy little prick with no substance to him.
He was there one minute as Matt, and the next minute he was MJ.
At first, it was a bit, hard for him to make a name.
A few months later, when we all sort of caught up with what had happened and started going, oh, what the hell, MJ?
Especially when he started to take photos, I think it was, I don't know, yeah, there was just some stuff he did.
And he just sort of gained notoriety that way.
When did you create MJ?
I created MJ in the fall of 2012. I was playing Gridiron and I thought ME sounded like a pretty shit name for like a Gridiron superstar that I was. So I was like, MJ.
How does he
sounded
represent
cool.
you? What does he represent to you?
Well, he is the more awesome and intelligent and charismatic version of Matthew Evans.
What is your favourite colour?
It's got to be a tie between red, blue and green, but like deep, not light. I don't like colours, I like deep, like burgundies and navies.
How long do you intend to keep MJ around?
Until people stop calling me it, which will apparently be never.
And how do you feel as MJ compared to when you met?
More gravitas and charisma.
I would have been shocked, honestly, if it lasted into college.
Till he gets bored of it.
I don't know, he'll probably hold on to it for a while.
If you asked me a year ago, do you think this will still be a thing in 3 months? I would have said no, of course not.
It'll probably go away after school though, because I can't imagine him going up to his colleagues and calling himself MJ to his boss's face or something like that.
I reckon it might fade away, but I'm not too sure.
So I genuinely have no idea.
You can't fight death. What you can do is accept it, get to this point intellectually and spiritually where you are able to recognize death in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing.